Buddy, welcome back. And we are about halfway there on our sessions in today's Global Masterclass, where we're covering all sorts of topics for you, from what's happening from a trending standpoint to Q&A sessions to this session, which is a follow-up on my first session earlier in the day, which was all about calculating costs. Now we're going to talk about the fun part: is how do we set selling prices, and ultimately, how do we make sure we can command maximum pricing, maximum profit for the work that we're completing in our business. Again, I want to remind you to use the chat and make sure that you ask questions throughout this presentation, because we don't want to leave anybody behind. And I'd love to hear tips from your business, what you're struggling with, what you're executing on when it comes to pricing strategy. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into the presentation. And I've outlined a lot of different tips in this session in a similar format to what you're looking at here. I want to lead in with this, which is 4 keys to be able to maximize profit, because that's really what we're looking to do here, is to be able to make sure we can make the most potential profit on every shirt that we print. And my 4 keys to maximizing profit that I want you to keep in the back of your mind are: create unique value in the product. And so when you approach pricing, we are going to talk about creating unique value as first and most important. Then we're going to go through having a price strategy. I'm actually going to walk through several different price strategies for you to consider in your business, with the pros and cons for each. Talk about never discounting your profit and how you can really uphold that statement and make it true for your business, where I didn't say don't discount, but we don't discount our profit. I'll explain what that means. And then we're going to give you some sales tips, which is delivering price confidently, and that how that can lead to more yeses, and not only more yeses, but more yeses quicker. So you are keeping your cost as low as possible and reducing risk in the process. So that's our outline for today. And I think that this is a practical session for anywhere in the world. And so hopefully you guys will get a lot out of it, certainly being recorded and available for playback right after the session if you want to review any of the tips shared here. So number 1, create unique value. This is really important to your business in general. But here's the question I want you to ask yourself: is how will you be uniquely relevant to your target market, right? And the first thing you need to do, as I mentioned in an earlier session, is you need to have a clear understanding of who your customer is. Who is that target market? And the reason you need to have a clear understanding of that target market is because to command the maximum price for your product, the target client has to find more value in your product than the other choices that are available to them. And unique means different than all the other choices. So you need to figure out how you can craft unique value and meet your target market exactly where they're at, and make them want to transact with you at a higher price point. If you are getting a lot of price pressure in your business, I would say you may fall into the top category as a generalist company. Typically, generalist companies operate at smaller margins. So a generalist company is a company that sets out to serve every potential type of customer, and they really don't niche down into the target markets they're setting up to serve. In the US market, and I think beyond, the best example I have as a generalist company would be Walmart, right? And I don't know if any of us want to compete with Walmart on price. I certainly wouldn't recommend it. They have a lot of advantages in scale to being a generalist company. As small businesses or even mid-size apparel decorating businesses, being a generalist, setting out to serve everybody and really not crafting unique value for the target market is going to leave you operating at smaller margins with a lot of price pressure. A specialist company, on the other hand, understands that target market and their buyer. And really, they understand not only that I'm setting up to serve, let's just say, the construction industry. That's an example I like to give, like an industrial sort of industry, but they understand who it is inside of construction companies or gas and oil companies or whatever the target market is that they are talking to. Because not only is it the target market, it's the target buyer within that market. If you are selling to these types of companies, how are you going to create unique value for that buyer specifically? And that is best arrived at through understanding that buyer's daily job, how they measure success, and what brings them delight and what pains them in the process, right? If we can solve through dreams and nightmares, as I like to call them, we can craft a lot more value into our product, really create a product that resonates and is of high value. And it's a lot more than just a decorated t-shirt at that point, right? And so the example of that is if I'm targeting construction companies and I'm particularly understanding that the director of human resources has a very tough time finding talent, retaining talent, and onboarding talent, perhaps we create a branded merch apparel line uh, to help serve and help with some of that employee retention and employee acquisition. We create a program around service milestones. We create a program around hire dates, achievement dates, et cetera, that branded merch ties into, right? And so when I talk about understanding your target market and setting your prices, if we are crafting unique and extreme value for a particular person inside of our target market, we're going to be able to have these other things that they are willing to pay more for. I always like to focus on quality and speed over price. I don't want to be a business that's a price leader per se. And so that's my first bit of advice. And you can apply these techniques to your target market. But as I mentioned up front, understand your target markets, understand who you're selling to, and what brings them value. So with a background understanding of that, I just always like to set that up. So those of you who've been to my classes before, you've heard that before, right? And that's because I firmly believe in it, because I've seen the outcome of people who really don't understand their customer and they end up all over the place, operating at thin margins, lots of price pressure. It's just not a whole lot of fun in the business. It's highly stressful. But with that understanding, now we can actually move to a price strategy. And so in this next little section, I'm going to go through three very different ways that you could approach pricing. And many of you could probably add three more ways to this list. But I thought outlining a few of the ways that I've seen and kind of showing you how much money you can make with each of these different ways would be a great place to start. But the main thing that I want to underscore here is have a strategy, period, right? We can't approach price in some way where we're trying to figure it out on the fly. Planning is important. And so that's part of this. So as a reminder, here is the cost we arrived at for this job in our last class this morning or this evening, depending on where in the world you're watching from. If you missed that class on calculating costs, I'd highly recommend you go back and rewatch that to understand how we arrived at the total cost to make this custom shirt at a quantity of 50 with a screen printed transfer at 661 all in with labor, materials, and overhead. That's going to serve as the backdrop for the next example. And so using that cost structure, I want to articulate probably the most popular price method that I've seen in the decorated apparel industry that's been taught in many seminar rooms throughout my career here by many different experts and speakers. And that's the Keystone method. And the Keystone method is pretty simple, is that you double your cost for your wholesale price. And so you would take that 661 cost of the t-shirt, you would double that for wholesale, and then you would double that again for retail. And so depending on what part of the channel you're participating in, let's say we're selling to Palm Bay Bike Company and they are running a bike rental shop right along the beach or wherever they're running that bike rental shop, and they want to sell this merch. The idea of the wholesale price is that as a decorator, using this Keystone method, we would sell to Palm Bay retail store at the 1322 price. And the expectation is they would about double that to sell it on their shelf to make some margin. And so this is a very easy, a very simplistic way to approach pricing. What I like about the Keystone method is it's very easy to calculate. Some of the potential risks with the Keystone method is that if you just follow it to a T and don't make any adjustments, you could leave yourself underpriced in some situations, or you could leave yourself priced out of the market in some situations. The best way that I can explain that is on a heat press, while there's a little more risk in damaging the item and the cost of damaging an item, it would take me about as much time, about 2 minutes, to put this logo on a t-shirt as it would to put this logo on a high-end jacket or a backpack or something of that nature. But that jacket may cost me $50 or $60 to make, depending on the brand of the jacket, right? And what that cost me to acquire it and applying that overhead that we learned about earlier. Now, I may be totally comfortable selling that jacket at $80 and making, $20 to $30 on my time. But the Keystone method would say that I have to sell that $50 cost jacket for $100, right? And that may leave me priced out of the market. And so you have to use some logic here when you're doing pricing in any of these methodologies, that this is a way to get to a general rule of pricing. You're always going to want to kind of season a little bit on top of that based on understanding your market and the price that can be commanded in the market. So that is the Keystone method. I'd be interested to see, is anybody using this method in their business? How is it working out? What struggles are you having? Please feel free to share that with other decorators in the chat. And if I have time, I'll come back to this method. But really easy, really simple to understand this methodology. The next methodology that I've seen out there a lot is something called gross profit margin. And typically companies will have a minimum gross profit margin that they want to target on a particular order, often represented in a percentage, right? And so in this case, I've modeled out an example of a company that would aim to target 40% of gross profit margin. And so the formula to calculate gross profit margin is basically sale price minus cost to make divided by price. That equals your gross profit margin percentage. So if my gross profit margin target was 40% in this instance, I'd be selling this garment at $11 wholesale. And if my retailer had a similar gross profit margin objective, they'd be selling it at $18.34 retail. And the question is, can you command these prices in the market, or can you command more? I like the gross profit margin method. I've seen a lot of sophisticated businesses use it, but I am not a huge fan of it. And the reason why is it's sometimes complicated to calculate, more complicated certainly than the Keystone method. And I think it also is a lot of potential risk where you could be selling stuff under price for the same amount of time it takes. So I'm going to show you one more method, and then I'm going to share some of the comments. I'm anxious to hear, is anybody using the gross profit margin method? I do see many people using the Keystone method. The last method that I'm a big fan of is minimum profit per piece. And so what I found, at least in the heat transfer process, as I've mentioned, it takes you about the same amount of time. Sometimes you're splitting a minute or 30 seconds to do any item that you'd want to heat press, assuming you have the right equipment that makes it easy to load, right? And you'll hear that in the next session where Molly and Kelly talk through heat press basics and kind of compare those. But if you have like a good tool for the job, a good Hotronix heat press that makes it easy to load, easy to change attachments and accommodate different items, it's going to take you only a couple minutes to decorate anything you want to decorate with your heat press, regardless of the construction and shape and style of that item. And so this minimum profit per piece model basically locks in a profit target for that time that you're spending. And so, if you have 8 hours in a day for an operator, for yourself, that you're willing to stand at the heat press, that you're going to make $8 in profit for every piece that rolls off of that machine. And I love that because it's a protection, right? And so that doesn't mean that's what I'm going to sell it for. It means that's the minimum that I'm willing to accept for it. And so what that means in this scenario is that 661 t-shirt, if I had a profit per piece target, and you make it up for your business that I want to make $8 back to the business on everything that comes off this press. And keep in mind, this is after paying myself to operate the press, right? This is just pure profit to the business. That would leave the wholesale price of $14.61. And if my retailer had a similar profit target, they would be making $22.61. At the end of the day, all three of these methods have pros and have cons. What I would encourage you to do is, the first thing I said, is to have a method and have a price strategy. Consider the pros and cons for your business and fine tune them and make adjustments based on those gaps that you're seeing for the markets that you're serving. Now, when you look at these three methods, which pricing method works best for you? We're getting some comments from the chat, so I'm going to read some of those comments out loud. Actually, I'm going to ask Megan, can you pull some of those comments around pricing strategies on so I can read them and people can read along with me? Just any random one we can work down through the list. Okay, so Cheyenne says, we use the Keystone method here at the shop and have for almost 8 years. I've been printing. I also keep an eye on what other printers in the area are charging, right? Which is very common, is having some sense of competition in the area to make sure you are in line with the market price for what you're providing. So it's good to hear the Keystone method in action. And obviously you've been using it for 8 years. Must be working well for you. Let's take a look at another comment. So Crystal says, I always make sure I can replace an item without losing anything. So basically the keystone method. Yeah. So you're making sure that you cover the expense of the item in your profit. So if you do have to replace something, you're to break even. So I haven't heard that before, but that's an interesting approach to it. Certainly a safe approach by deploying a version of the keystone method. What else? So here we have Jason. We recently had a consultant, I love this, walk through some of our reps pricing. They thought they were selling a certain margin using the gross profit margin method, but we learned they were not considering all the direct costs when calculating their margins. Very true. And I love that, the consultant can come through and basically say, yes, we need to have a firm understanding of total cost before we can deploy any method, which is exactly why we started with the cost presentation to make sure we're not missing any key elements of that. All right, a couple more comments. Mark says we use a sliding scale gross profit margin based on dollar amount of the sale. Lower dollar amount is double gross profit margin. Higher dollar orders drop down to about 35%. Yeah, so this is really interesting. I love that. Great tip, Mark. This is kind of deploying the same strategy that I had mentioned on minimum profit per piece, because naturally on the profit per piece, it's going to be a sliding scale down. Like if you would translate the gross profit margin based on making less gross profit margin, even though it's the same or more profit per piece on your higher dollar value. So that's a nice way to approach it and create that sliding scale. Again, you would want to build out an Excel formula to be able to manage all of this quick and easy. Let's take two more comments and then we'll move on if they're out there. Jason says they were only using part and material costs. We watched margins drop when we started looking at inbound freight, direct labor, storage costs, all the costs we talked about in the earlier discussion. Perfect. Yeah, that space and that inventory costs something for sure. All right. And one last comment here, if we got it. Is it possible to create some type of hybrid model? Absolutely. And that kind of transitions next into, I think, what my next slide is. And so let's take a look at the different models. So how much should you charge? People always kind of get a giggle out of this. Really, the question is, how much is your customer willing to pay? And I know that seems like a cop out, but it goes back to the first point that you should have such an understanding of your customer and the value you're creating for your customer and such a specialist knowledge of that customer that you exactly understand what they're willing to pay. And I think that decision it should be informed by your competition and the landscape around you competing for that customer. But in a lot of cases, you may be able to be above market if you're really creating some other value in the offer that your competitors aren't creating. And again, I love value add to product rather than price reduction. And so there's no replacement for being able to adjust this sliding scale up or down based on what you think you can command. Then you have to decide, is it worth it, right? To add a little bit of complexity with moving it up or down, or is it better just to have it locked in and go? So in all of these cases, the keystone method, the target gross profit margin method at 40%, and the profit per piece, here are the different prices that would have been established for that shirt. And so, can you sell this 50 shirt job to your customer at these prices? So I want you to chime in on the chat. What price would you sell this 50 shirt job, this single color graphic, to your customers? It can be one of the prices on the board. It can be lower or higher. But if I said, how much would you charge for this? And I were Palm Bay Bike Company, what would you charge me? So we'll wait for some comments in. I'm just going to read them as they're coming through. Don't be quiet on me. I need you now. Oh, there it is. I got to scroll down. You guys are answering me. I just wasn't scrolling. So Unique says $16 in her area for her target market. Sarah says 12. Crystal says 20 for less than 15 shirts. Leonardo says 20. We have 15, 22, 15, 15. Yeah, so we're all over the place. But I think the theme is here, most people are saying a price over what is represented. And so I would always reserve the right to move a price up on the scale based on what the market could command. And the next section is going to show you that even if you sold at this price, any of these prices, how much do you want to make is also another really good question. And so I put this together just to show you that heat printing can be extremely profitable. Jeremy says I'm in the wrong country. Laugh out loud. Yeah. So it's going to vary by location and by country. And it also varies just regionally in the US market for those of you that are conducting business local and not necessarily online. Like I've seen huge variances depending on cost of living and things of that nature. But the point here is even at the lowest price, we're delivering $219.50 back to our business in less than 2 hours. So you can do the math, run this math over, 4 jobs on the heat press a day, and it becomes highly profitable to own a heat press in the business, anywhere between $800 and $1,600 just on probably the most run-of-the-mill basic job that a heat press can do. We're going to make a lot more profit with that time if we're decorating performance wear, performance polos, backpacks, jackets, headwear, full color graphics, some of these other items. But this is the very floor of what I think you can make back on your heat press. So about $100 per hour is what we're seeing. The challenge really isn't, can the heat press make you money? It's how good can you market and sell? Like that's always the challenge, is how well can you market and sell? And that's why I'm encouraging you to really know that customer and think deeply about how to connect decorated merchandise to your audience. And really, that's the spirit of a lot of the rest of the presentation. I want to lead off with not discounting your profit and tell you what I mean by this. And so here are my top suggestions for you not to discount your profit. Sometimes you get a little price pressure. You're like, we can cut the price by a couple dollars. I'd like to say, I guess point number 3, let me start there, is it's never a good idea to start a relationship on price. It's super tough to recover when you build a relationship based on discounting and based on price. So I am a big fan of point number 1 with not only having a price strategy, but having a price grid. You can decide whether that price grid is kind of behind the inquiry form on the website or in your back pocket to where only you use it, or you publish it out to your client. I do think there's pros and cons to each of those. But I think in any case, you should have a price grid, because when you have a price grid, what you're able to do is have confidence in the pricing that's being established. And so you can know and have calculated that I can offer a discount at 200 shirts. Why? Because I have a cost reduction. And so while I'm offering a discount for the volume, I'm also getting a discount because I'm able to buy at a higher quantity, lower my cost of my shirt or the cost of my transfer or the cost of freight across that order, right? Or pick up some efficiencies in production to be able to do it faster, better with less labor costs. And so being able to have that price grid that pre-calculates where you save and passing that savings on to a customer, not all the savings, most of the savings, is always a good win. The other thing I would like to say, and I really believe this, is delivering pricing in good, better, best. And so when I talk about delivering pricing in good, better, best, there's a few different ways you can do this. But what you'll notice here is there are 3 choices and no more than 3 choices. There is this concept and lots of studies done on this called the paradox of choice, is that you can really confuse customers when you offer too many choices, and ultimately it paralyzes them in such a way that they're not able to move to decision either at all or as quickly, and both cases are bad, right? So being able to offer 1, 2, and 3 choices when you're presenting product and understanding customer needs is so powerful. And so what I like to do is, if you can, have an understanding of the client's target budget, right? And always position the product that you feel is the best market fit for their budget or what you know about other clients like them. Right in that middle slot is better. That's going to be the core product. We expect them to pick that product over 50% of the time. But usually what happens is when you deliver that price and only that price, you get a bunch of feedback and, well, can you discount it if I do this or whatever? Now the price grid is going to help with some of that, but how I like to use that good category, which will be, the lower end of the spectrum, is offer them an economy choice. So take exactly what you think they want with the quality of print, the quality of shirt that they want, and figure out how can I shave some cost out of it, right? Can I buy maybe an open-ended carded cotton shirt instead of that ring spun cotton shirt to pull a little bit of cost out of it for me? Now I'm delivering the client another choice, so I'm not discounting my profit in the process. I'm going to make sure I'm making equal or better money if they slide down the scale, certainly if they slide up the scale. And that's where I like to position the best. So A lot of people are willing to stretch their budget if they see a product that better accomplishes their goal. And so, if the goal of a decorated apparel piece is to have that design worn out, what better way to make sure that design gets worn out by either upgrading the blank or upgrading the logo or both? And so, in that best category, you can put a little bit of an aspirational lift to it, right? And so, if they're buying a basic, brand hoodie or t-shirt, now let's move into a retail brand that they aspire to wear, like a Champion or an Under Armour or Nike, or you guys know the brands, Adidas, something that they want to move to. Or it could be as simple as taking a basic white graphic for that bike company and, oh, what if we upgraded that to a reflective transfer? Now I'm offering the benefit of visibility when the client's riding the bike or wearing that around town. I'm making sure it lights up in all the photos when the flash is on, right? So think about how you position your products along good, better, best. So you're creating more profit in every sale, not discounting your profit. And then lastly, understanding when discounts make sense. And so discounts really make sense when you are reducing your cost, right? I have a lot of ideas on when discount makes sense. And I'm going to show you that here in just another slide. I have a whole list for you of where they can make sense. So let's go through as a review of these 4 items real quick. Number 1, create a price grid. Again, the value of the price grid, it's pre-calculated and created. Volumes can equal cost reduction, right? Order more, get a better price because I'm reducing my cost to make. And then your price delivery is faster. And when you deliver price fast, and as you'll see in a later slide, confidently, delivering that fast and confident changes perception. And immediately the client's open to say yes and give a response and not push back based on the way you deliver that price and the speed at which you deliver it. Delivering a price faster is also proven to reduce the sales cycle length and increase your sales velocity, which means you'll be able to win more deals quicker at a better pace, reducing your cost of sale. Good, better, best presentation. Again, choice without complexity. Analysis paralysis, as Aaron had stated in the chat. Opportunity for savings without you doing a price concession. An opportunity to upgrade, as we spoke about, in some premium way to maximize your profit. And then discounting your profit. Long-term risk is we don't want to establish the relationship from a compromised position. We don't want to get into a back and forth negotiation, because not only does that cost more from your sales resources and your time that you're extending. We said time was the most important thing, but it creates risk for communication labs. Like, look, you drop the ball, don't get back to them as quick, or they drop the ball and quit responding. There's just a lot of risk for that buyer journey to go cold, and you never to get it back again. So strike while the iron's hot, so to speak. Deliver that price quick from a price grid, have your good, better, best ready to go, and you're going to win a lot more deals and pull a lot more business through. And then lastly, I would say desperation equals discounts. And so what I find is a lot of people are chasing overhead. Create a better model, get leaner in your business. We talked about that earlier. Stealing business from competitors, never a great strategy in my experience. I used to operate like this, honestly, in my early sales career, right? Where I try to switch somebody from this brand to our brand. And those things I found are temporary. Yeah, like you may have the occasion where somebody sticks for a long time, but usually you're renting that customer and you're renting them at a discount. And that customer is very easily changed and switched. It's much better, instead of focusing on your competition, to really obsess about your customer, how you can create unique value. And then you end up in this space that, if you guys like to read, the book's called Blue Ocean Strategy. We end up in this uncontested market space, right? Where there's a lot less sharks fighting for the same business, which is the red ocean. The red ocean is not a place we want to play in long. We basically cut prices, we fight each other. It's a race to the bottom. Not really gratifying to anybody in the process, not the types of relationships we want to build. So I'd rather obsess about the customer, craft insights for the customer, bring unique value to be able to chase the business. Now, having said that, I'm not telling you that a discount never makes sense. And so I felt like it was important to say, from a pricing strategy standpoint, here's where you may want to discount. We talked about the customer buys more. Obviously, they expect a better price. So we may want to discount there. I've also seen discounting being a customer acquisition strategy. You've heard the term loss leader. Not a big fan of ever pricing so I lose money, but pricing so I don't make as much money, because I know it's for new business and it's aligned to some marketing campaign or program that's going to pull in new customers that I'm going to be able to sell other things. But I like to keep that tight and refined. Like that's why you see some of the companies, they'll run a polo that's literally only one color prints, only 50 shirts, and it delivers like this, or only left chest embroidered logos and it delivers like this. So those are customer acquisition strategies, and it really gets viewed as marketing expense. The profit loss gets viewed as marketing expense and a way to bring the customer into the business. But you just have to be super careful that you're not establishing that relationship on price, because as I mentioned earlier, that's really tough to undo. One of my favorite places to provide a discount is a get off the fence, right? And so when you're building your sales process as a company, your sales process should align to your buyer's journey. So this is like a little bonus tip. Build the stages that your buyer goes through to make a decision on custom decorated apparel. If you can unlock like the stages that you think the buyer goes through, it's probably going to start with, research, and then it's probably going to move to inquiry. Maybe they reach out, right, or walk in the door, or pick up the phone and call you, visit your website. Then it may move to quote or price negotiation, and then it probably moves to this stage called decision, like it's go and no go, like they're thinking about it, right? Or reviewing samples, maybe. So think about your buyer's journey for your target market. And really, you want to align your sales process immediate to that buyer journey, like completely parallel. So every action you take when you engage with a client, whether it's delivering a price, delivering a sample, delivering education in that research phase, should be designed to attract customers into the journey. So they're only in the journey with you and not you and a bunch of other competitors, right? That's why we craft insights and bring them into the journey. And then think about how we advance the buyer along the journey. And once you get to that last stage of the journey, I call it kind of like get off the fence, right? You've done everything you can to prove your value. It was a real opportunity. And now the buyer just needs to make a decision. And for some reason, unknown to us, they're delaying. Sometimes a discount can help trigger a get off the fence. But when I offer a discount at this stage in the process, it usually is a time discount, and it's really designed to get them off the fence. So, hey, we're running this special deal up into the end of the month. Or, hey guys, we're running these show specials only at this virtual event. Get what we're doing here? We believe in this process. And so that's one way you can provide value to help people just make that investment decision and get started with you. And then lastly, kind of tied to that is it can accelerate the sales cycle, reducing the number of times you need to follow up and the cost of, opportunities just sitting there waiting that you have to keep track of before they buy. So if you don't have a sales process, if you don't understand your client's buyer journey, there's some homework. Do that. Invest in a CRM or some way to track opportunities so you can really measure these and manage these in a methodical way, and ultimately track why you win and why you lose. And if you find you're losing a lot on price and can prove that through lost deals that were interested but didn't buy, that's where we need to go in and do one of two things. Not lower your price. We need to go in and figure out how we provide more client value, or more clearly define who the target market is and kind of where we didn't provide value along the way so they didn't go with us. So don't discount your profit, and then deliver price confidently. I know I'm giving a lot of information in a short amount of time, so feel free to chat in questions or feedback if you have it. I get your question, Tony. I am coming to it. So delivering price confidently, I like to say desperation equals discount. So one of the first things that I train on when I'm doing sales training is when you deliver price, it's very important, the wording, especially if you're in a conversation or even an email. The price is, boom, deliver it, right? Or the price is this at your budget. Here it is if you want to save a little money. Here it is on a premium. But the price is this. And then say nothing and wait. And that's really what I see as the top issue with a lot of people in any sales process, whether they're selling cars or t-shirts or homes, is after they deliver price, they've done all this work, is immediately after they deliver it, they get insecure about the price they deliver and that the person on the other end of the transaction may not want it. And so they start to project that insecurity onto the customer and fill that silence with words and noise, right? And so an example of how somebody would deliver the price is they say, The price of that T-shirt is $20, but yeah. So what do you think about the $20 or like they're just filled with words, right? And what that shows is that there's room for negotiation. Immediately, you're vulnerable in a position where you start like undoing the price that you just delivered through your other comments. So practice delivering pricing, being quiet, let the customer process it, be comfortable in that silence. First one to talk loses, right? There's a trade off of value. And if you start filling it with words because it's uncomfortable, let them respond and let them say that price is too high. It doesn't fit my budget. Oh, great. Well, the good news is I've structured a way that you can save. Is this more within your budget? Okay. So the words we use, the way we write our emails, those are very important. And you want to project confidence throughout that process. So you can deliver the business at the best price. So, um, again, the four keys to maximize profit. We've shared some price strategy here. Number one is understand your client, craft unique value. Number two is deploy a price strategy. I've shown you three today, and many of you have shared what's working. Number three is never discount your profit. We've talked about that. And lastly, is we want to deliver that price confidently. Now, that was a lot in a short amount of time. And so I want to open it up for questions and feedback. And I'm going to take Tony's question first. Tony asked, do you have, and you can bring me a full screen, Megan, if you don't mind. Tony asked, do you have a sample price grid to use as a template? I don't have one ready for you now, but I do have them from other apparel decorators. So I absolutely will take that as an action item to be able to struggling to get me full screen. That's all right. Get me as big as you can then. um, we can come back to you, Tony, and get one as a template for download, because I know a lot of decorators have them. Actually, if any of you have them on your websites and wouldn't mind dropping a link to your website with your price grid, I'd welcome you to share that in the chat. All right, what other questions? I'm gonna scroll back through and make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, this is good. So Joe says, I'm fairly new in the business and I've been building relationship and just coming out and asking, what have you been paying in the past? I love questions. Like questions in the sales process and engagement are great. I always tell people you should be talking about 30% of the time in your interaction with your customers. We actually have software that measures how much we talk in our interactions with customers through our phone conversations. And we really target 30% of the time. And the reason why is because we want to be understanding, right? We want to be asking more questions. We want to be listening, right? And then when we talk, there is a time to present what we've learned, but first we need to gather. And Joe, your example of what are they paying is a great gathering question, and just understanding more so we can really follow through and deliver value. And Chris says it as well. He said, I ask, what is your budget? Yeah, I think budget, timing, and authority are three big things to understand when you're going into a sales engagement. Do they have a budget? A lot of people are going to try to skirt that question. So you just want to like refine how you ask that so you can get a good answer. What is your timing to move forward so you can align your follow up to their timing, and just make sure they're serious about it and you're not wasting your time when the order may not happen. And then lastly, do they have the authority? Like, are they the decision maker to be able to make the decision, or are there other people involved? And if there are other people involved, you need to make sure that you're creating value for those people and knowing who they are. All right, time for a couple more questions. All right, Beverly says, identified a few things I need to change, develop. Thank you. You are certainly welcome, Beverly. That's the goal. Even just one little thing and refining sometimes makes a big difference. Any update on your fantastic Excel doc? So Gosta is referring to, I created a cost calculation Excel doc workbook that is downloadable. It's all in US dollars, but we can share the link to that. So we'll work to dig that up and share the link where you can download that if you want to use it. And do you have a good formula to price your items, as in good, better, best? So Mary, I would use the same formulas I stated with either the keystone or the minimum profit per piece or gross profit margin. I would just make sure, like when you're calculating the raw profit dollars on good, better, best, that they're all in the same range, right? I don't want to like take what could be an $8 profit per item sale and reduce it down to a $4 profit per item sale, at the good category. What I'm looking to do is find cost savings either in the blank or the decoration, concessions that the client makes to get the better price, but I still want to make my goal of $8 in profit per sale or more if they move along the grid, right? And yeah, and Sarah says knowing their pain points helps add value too. Yeah, I always say the most powerful things in sales are dreams and nightmares. Right? It's an easy way to remember it. Uh, what are the opportunities? What are they dreaming about? What do they aspire to accomplish? What does success look like? But pain is powerful, as is fear. And so nightmares is like, where is their pain in the process that we can focus on and fix? And yes, you can bring a ton of value through having your products fix something in a business. And Chris says, quite often customers don't know how much something costs. So you do need to educate them. Yeah, and it's honestly, it's like even the words we use in our conversations, like if we can establish our business in a position of really we're aiming for trust. I think trust starts with credibility. And so you want to establish yourself as the expert in the space that's going to help them solve and get to what they're trying to accomplish, whether that's solving the pain point or aspiring to accomplish something, taking advantage of an opportunity. You can be an educator in the process, and it's so more gratifying to sell through education and being kind of a consultant than it is through some of the tactics that probably many of us have learned over the years that feel pretty slimy sometimes. All right. Yeah, these sessions are recorded. Derek should certainly be able to watch it back. Ghost, I'm glad you like the spreadsheet. Thanks. Yeah, always Gav, good point. Always someone willing to do it cheaper. Don't fall into that trap. Yeah, I'd rather do half as much work and make the same amount of money. So always say you have your limited thing is time, right? As soon as you start tying up your time with low profit stuff, you don't have the opportunity to do the high profit stuff. So I'd rather sell half as many items and make double the profit on those items, even if that means more no's than yeses in the process. That's why I have a very clear understanding of, I recommend you have a very clear understanding of your target audience and the work you want to develop. Yeah. And Derek says, whatever method, you take dollars to the bank, not percentages. Thank you. And amen to that. I'm a fan of raw profit dollars, not percentages. Wow. You guys got lots of great feedback. Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, service and relationship you provide makes this not a commodity business. Yeah, commodities are not fun, right? Amazon sells commodities. I don't think any of us want to set up to compete with Amazon. So hopefully you'd enjoyed this class. We're coming up on time here, so I want to thank you all for the feedback and your commentary. Through the costing and the pricing class, I hope we've made you a more profitable business that's excited to make some changes or maybe develop your strategy. The next class that we're going to do here in just over 15 minutes is going to be pretty important. It's heat press basics and comparison. And so in that class, Kelly and Molly are going to actually show you some heat presses, compare the differences so you can pick the right heat press for your business. And I always say, if you invest right in a heat press, it's going to allow you to print more items, to capitalize on more sales opportunities, to basically deliver higher profit and higher margins to your business. So make sure you join for that class, and I'll be back a little later this afternoon with you all for another class. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll conclude this one.